welcome back to another episode of HealthCap Weekly Wrap. We've got a full show today with several updates that really span the spectrum, from federal oversight and reform efforts to emerging trends and on-the-ground innovation in senior care communities. We're starting with a major CMS update, then moving into a national coalition focused on reform, followed by new insights from Mather Institute, a practical wellness toolkit, and we'll wrap up by recognizing organizations that are rethinking what senior care can look like.
Yeah, this is one of those weeks where you can really hear how all these threads connect: regulation, purpose, innovation, and real-world practice. So first up, we're starting with a big one from CMS. This is the Revised State Operations Manual Guidance, QSO-26-03-NH, specifically Chapters 5 and 7. And it's not an exaggeration to say this is a significant update.
We recently recorded an episode of Heart to Heart with HealthCap, where Angie sat down with Cindy Johnson, Vice President of Clinical Compliance for Atrium Centers, to talk through the original CMS memo and what CMS was signaling with these regulatory changes.
Right. That conversation really focused on the intent behind the original guidance, including CMS's push for increased oversight and greater consistency in surveys, while also acknowledging how challenging it is for providers to keep up with frequent and complex regulatory shifts.
Exactly. Angie and Cindy talked about how this was already showing up in real time, from ongoing RN shortages to changes in survey team composition. They also discussed growing concerns around surveyor discretion, the potential use of photography during surveys and what that could mean for resident privacy and community operations. And they wrapped up with practical insight into how communities can think about documentation and preparedness, especially related to past noncompliance.
Since that podcast was recorded, CMS released additional guidance on April 3rd, which expands on and clarifies many of the issues that were already being discussed. So today we're going to focus on what that updated guidance adds and what leaders need to be aware of now.
This document is more than 300 pages, and it further defines how complaints, surveys, and enforcement are handled. Chapter 5 focuses on complaint procedures, including expanded examples of immediate jeopardy such as unsafe resident discharges, and clearer expectations around when off-site investigations can be used, which CMS now considers rare and subject to approval.
And that's important because it turns what felt like a conceptual shift in the original memo into much more specific direction. CMS is signaling how surveyors are expected to apply this guidance, not just why the change is happening.
Chapter 7 builds on that by standardizing survey operations, including survey team composition, minimum on-site time, and off-hours surveys. It also moves guidance that used to live in Appendix P directly into Chapter 7, making it more central to how surveys are conducted.
One of the most impactful additions is around civil money penalties. The updated guidance aligns CMPs with the CMP analytic tool, includes annual inflation adjustments, expands the use of per-instance CMPs, and confirms that per-instance penalties will be publicly displayed on Nursing Home Care Compare starting June 24th, 2026.
So, taken together, the original memo set the direction, the heart-to-heart episode explored what that meant on the ground. And this additional guidance really fills in the operational details communities now need to prepare for.
Okay, so after that very regulatory-heavy update, it makes sense to step back and talk about the bigger why, and that's where our second story comes in, the Moving Forward Coalition.
Yeah, and this document is really about purpose. The whole goal is to explain why the coalition exists and what it's trying to accomplish, specifically focused on improving quality of life and quality of care in U.S. senior care communities.
At its core, the coalition is articulating a shared vision. It's grounded in the belief that every resident deserves care that honors individual values, is person-centered and equitable, and that staff need the training and support to deliver that level of care consistently.
What really stands out is who makes up this coalition. It's a national, multi-stakeholder group funded by the John A. Hartford Foundation, and it intentionally includes residents, certified nursing assistants, staff, policymakers, advocates, and researchers.
That inclusion is key. This isn't reform being designed in isolation. The coalition's role isn't just advocacy, it's about driving real, actionable improvements in how care is financed, delivered, and regulated.
They're focused on identifying feasible short-term priorities, testing practical initiatives, and then promoting solutions that can be scaled nationally. The structure supports that too, with a steering committee that includes leaders connected to the 2022 NASEM Nursing Home Reform Report, working committees that include residents and CNAs, and a broader community that helps refine and amplify the work.
And the document really does invite participation. It encourages feedback, engagement through events and newsletters, and reinforces that reform is a collective effort, not a top-down mandate.
All right, from purpose and reform, let's zoom out even further and talk about what's next more broadly. That brings us to Mather Institute Next, Volume 4.
This report is all about trends, insights, and considerations shaping how we live, work, and age well. And what's nice is that it's not abstract. It's packed with specific findings.
One major theme is health and longevity, particularly the shift from disease detection to disease prediction. Researchers are using AI combined with biomarkers like genetics, proteins, and lab values to predict risks for things like cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, cognitive decline, and even depression years before symptoms appear.
Right? And the report talks about biological age versus chronological age, which is fascinating. Someone might be 60 years old chronologically, but their biological age could be much younger or older. And that has real implications for proactive wellness strategies.
There's also a global policy angle. Countries like the UAE and Singapore are investing heavily in prevention-focused longevity strategies. Singapore's Healthier SG program, for example, personalizes health plans and subsidizes preventive care to prioritize health span, not just lifespan.
Another standout finding is around movement. The report highlights research on Japanese interval walking, which showed a 40% improvement in peak exercise capacity and a 20% increase in leg strength over a 10-year period. And these benefits held even when participants didn't maintain the routine perfectly over time.
Sleep is another big area. The report discusses cognitive shuffling, a mental technique designed to reduce racing thoughts and help people fall asleep, as well as data showing that 6 out of 10 adults aren't getting enough sleep.
On the food and social side, there's growing interest in cookbook clubs as a way to build connection and cultural exchange, along with consumer data showing nearly half of shoppers are prioritizing fresh, minimally processed foods.
And then there's work and leisure. Gallup data shows employee engagement at a 10-year low, with only 31% of workers feeling engaged. At the same time, people are working fewer hours, and 45% of employees are using AI to improve productivity, which raises new questions about engagement, retention, and balance.
All of these trends have clear relevance for senior care communities, from wellness programming and dining to workforce strategy and resident engagement.
Okay, so after talking about trends, it's helpful to bring things back to something very practical. That's where our fourth story comes in, the Person-Centric Wellness Model Toolkit from Mather Institute.
This isn't just one resource. It's a full toolkit designed to help communities implement and sustain a person-centric approach to wellness, grounded in autonomy, achievement, and affiliation.
The facilitator guide acts as the roadmap. It explains how to roll out the model, educate staff and residents, and build shared language around the 3 A's.
The toolkit includes communication and education tools like a one-page handout and customizable presentation, as well as reflection and improvement tools like program audit checklists and staff self-reflection prompts.
And importantly, it includes evaluation and resident-centered tools. There are program evaluation forms that measure satisfaction and support for autonomy, achievement, and affiliation, and a resident assessment that can be used as both a survey and a conversation starter around personal wellness goals.
What's powerful here is that the toolkit doesn't require communities to reinvent everything. It helps teams take stock of what they're already doing, identify strengths and gaps, and make intentional adjustments that align with person-centric values.
All right, and to close the episode, we're ending with some inspiration. The Mather Institute Promising Practice Awards 2025.
These awards recognize organizations that have moved away from conventional practices to design innovative approaches that better support the people they serve.
This year's award recipient is Music Theater International, recognized for Broadway Senior. It's a first-of-its-kind program that adapts well-known musicals specifically for older adult performers, creating opportunities for creative expression, social connection, and well-being through in-house musical theater.
There were also 3 honorable mentions. Bethany Village in Ohio was recognized for a legacy of heartbeats, a hospice-based music therapy program that transforms a resident's recorded heartbeat into a personalized musical keepsake for families.
St. Therese in Minnesota was honored for the OARS program, which addresses onboarding and retention challenges by creating a dedicated onboarding and retention specialist role. The program has shown measurable improvements in staff stability and continuity of care.
And Agents of Movement was recognized for shifting from age-based fitness labels to ability-based descriptions, helping older adults choose movement programs based on function rather than age, promoting inclusion and confidence.
What's so compelling about these examples is how different they are, from theater to workforce strategy to fitness. But they all share a focus on dignity, individuality, and better experience.
And that's really a great note to end on. Regulation sets expectations, coalitions define purpose, research highlights what's coming, toolkits show how to act, and these award recipients prove that meaningful change is already happening.
That's all for this week's HealthCap Weekly Wrap. Thanks so much for listening, and for more insights and commentary, be sure to check out Angie's blog at healthcapusa.com/Angie's-blog.
We'll be back next week with more stories you should know about.
Until then, take care.